Have you ever tried to resharpen the serrated blade of a Swiss Army knife? In this video I will show you a fantastic trick how you can keep the perfect angle during this process. And I explain you why I don't like 95% of the YouTube videos on this topic, and of course I will try to make it better, and I promise you my technique is different. Hello YouTube! Welcome to another workshop video. In this series I'll show you maintenance and customization tricks for your Swiss Army knife. To be honest, I own only 3 Swiss Army knives and 1 multi-tool with a serrated or partially serrated edge. This is a soldier knife, a rescue tool, a ranger grip and a Swiss tool. And sorry, but I don't use them often, because the geometry of a serrated blade is focused on kitchen stuff and not on wood carving. So that's why I can't tell you that I have the experience of hundreds of serrated blades I have already resharpened. But I developed my own technique, and this technique is different. And exactly this technique I want to show you now. The first thing you have to do is to check the condition of your serrated cutting edge. For that I use the light test. So hold the knife like this, that the cutting edge is facing against the light source. This can be the sun, this can be a flashlight, this can be any other lamp. Now you have to start to play with this angle a little bit and with the sideways tilt, until you can see reflections on your cutting edge. So can you see these shiny spots on the tip of the waves? So at these shiny spots the edge is dull. And you can see that this is only on the tips. Now I try to give you a comparison with a sharp knife. I hope this works. So on the sharp knife you can't see these bright spots because there are no spots which are reflecting. And on the dull knife at the left side you can see many bright spots. So, and if you ask yourself, why is my tomato knife, for example, still sharp after 5, 6, 7 years use it every day? The answer is, this is because only the tips are getting in contact with the blade, with the cutting board, with the bones, with other hard materials. Inside the valley, the knife gets only in contact with soft cutting materials. At least if you have a normal use. But that's the answer why such a knife can stay very long sharp. So if you want to resharpen such a knife, we have to set our focus on sharpening the tips and on keep a perfect sharpening angle. First, I want to show you a super trick how you can keep a consistent angle. After, I'll show you my technique how to sharpen the knife. So my information about these 111mm models are that they have a primary bevel on both sides from about 4 or 5 degrees, and they have a secondary bevel on one side from about 24 degrees. So, and if I check these specifications with my self-made goniometer, I have to say, okay, this is 2 times 4 degrees, is about 22 degrees. That's okay. And by the way, if you want to know how I made this wonderful angle measure device, I will give you a step-by-step explanation in one of my next videos. So that means that if I put the Swiss Army knife on the table like this, the angle of the secondary bevel is 24 degrees, like this. And if I want to achieve that the secondary bevel comes to stay parallel to the surface, I have to turn the whole knife like this. So, because if the secondary bevel is parallel to the table, it's much easier to guide the sharpening tool than in a 24-degree angle. To achieve this, I have to make a template with 24 degrees, and I make this out of cardboard. The trick that you achieve a consistent grinding angle is to open the Phillips, or to open the corkscrew, or to open the awl. So if you hold the knife like this, you got always a super stable 3-point support. Hold it like this, and this is super stable. Hold it like this, super stable. Hold it like this, super stable. Now you have to achieve the right angle. And this you can make by underlay the handle like this. Now we have another angle than without. So to measure this angle, we made our template. So this is too less, and I know if I support it 4 millimeters, I have the perfect angle. So now this is 24 degrees. I'll show you. That means the secondary bevel here is parallel to the surface. And believe me, to guide your sharpening tool parallel to the table surface is much easier than to hold a constantly 24-degree angle and working like this. Forget it. This is much easier. That's why I like this trick. And yes, you have to know for every single knife how much you have to underlay the handle that you get the right angle, that the secondary bevel is parallel to the surface. Here on the soldier model, it's 4 millimeters, and here, for example, on the rescue tool, it's 2 millimeters because this tool has in this direction 1 layer more. And again, you have to know for every single knife how much you have to support it. But hey, how many Swiss Army knives with a serrated blade do you have at home? 1 or 2? So it's not that hard to remember. And outdoors, I would use a thin stick to underlay, or 2 thin sticks to underlay the knife. And if you don't know how much is 4 millimeters for the soldier knife, I know this here. Yeah, this base here is 4 millimeters. So if you can put the stick in here, you have 4 millimeters. Or on the rescue tool, I guess this tool has about 2 millimeter thickness. So yeah. Now I want to show you my technique to sharpen these knives. So the first thing I do is to color the entire length of the cutting bevel with a permanent marker. This helps me to check if I grind with the correct angle and I can see if I remove only material between the tips in the valleys or if I also remove material on the tips where the knife is dull. For this task I often use the dual sharp from Victorinox because this sharpener has these nice rounded edges here and here, and they fit perfect into the valley. Or I use this conical diamond coated sharpening rod from Lansky. A conical sharpener has the advantage that you start with the grinding stroke with the very small diameter in the depression and you end at the tips with the big diameter. And now I sharpen with the Victorinox Dual. You can clearly see that the blunt tips are not sharpened from both grinding tools. The tips are still completely red. I know that the shape of the serrations can be different, and I know that the cross-section of a sharpening tool can be different. But I'm sure that you very often don't sharpen the dull tips if you just make push strokes with your grinding tool. So I recommend to make also sideways move in both directions if you see that the tips are still red, like this. Now you can feel a burr on the other side and remove this burr with very flat strokes. And if you have a leather strap, use a leather strap and make the finish. So now let's do the light test. Can you see any reflecting spots? So for me it seems to be okay. The condition of the blade is for sure much better than before. So let's do a paper cutting test. It's not so bad. So my friends, I'm quite happy with the result, and in contrast to many other YouTubers, I find that sharpening serrated edge is a challenging task, not an easy task. So for a good result, I gave you two tips. Tip number one was the 3-point support for keeping the perfect angle. And the tip number two was to make a sideways move with the grinding tool in both directions if you see on the colored edge that you don't grind on the tips if you just make push strokes. So my friends, that's it for today. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and see you next Friday. Ciao!